Hi there, I'm Kevin from the Codemagic Solutions Engineering team, and today we're going to be talking about white labeling with Codemagic. And I've invited Mohammed from the Solutions Engineering team to give us an overview of the process and how to set up white labeling with Codemagic. So thanks for taking the time today, Mohammed, and
No problem. Hello, Kevin. How are you?
uh, pretty good,
I'm
thank you.
Mohammed. I'm solutions engineer at Codemagic, and today I'll be talking about white labeling using Codemagic. Okay, first, what is app white labeling? Basically, it's the process of rebranding your base application to sell it to multiple customers. And in the context of app development, it refers to building an application that can be easily customized and with different branding elements such as colors, logos, and other design features. Okay, so let's talk about the difference between app white label and custom mobile application. So the white label application basically are built in such a way that can be easily branded and customized, allowing you to, as I said, changing colors, logos, and other elements to make them look unique to your brand. Whereas the custom mobile application are built specifically for your company's needs, so there's no way you brand them or change the appearance without making any major updates to the code itself. And that's an important point to talk about, updating to the code itself or reading from other configuration file to customize things. Okay, now maybe some people are confused about the term flavors. With flavors, you are creating different versions of your application within the same project. So maybe you can create different flavors for development, QA, production. That's called flavors. It's not white labeling. Okay, so that's white labeling in general. Right now, I'll be talking about how CodeMagic handle this, and before that, I'll be talking about how you can manage your customers' assets. So when I says assets, it's basically refers to the app icons for each of your clients or any other specific assets that you want to implement for this specific client. So in here we have multiple approaches. You can go with whatever suits you best, but I'll be talking about one approach. So basically, for each of your client, you should give each one of them a unique identifier. So CodeMagic can identify each of your clients. So let's say that we have 10 clients or 10 customers. Each one of them, we gave them a unique identifier. So let's say 001, 002, etc. A unique identifier for each one of them. And we need to store their Android and iOS icons. So, for example, I already generated the icons for all of the clients and copy them from this path. So I'm talking about a Flutter application right now. So and I added them to a zip archive, and so in here I have three zip archives for three clients, and all of them are following the same naming convention. So all of them are assets underscore the client ID. We will be using this convention in our code to dynamically read the correct name and download the correct files. Okay, so how CodeMagic handles this flow? So first of all, we need to understand that we'll be starting a new CodeMagic build using the API request. Why is that? Because there's some stuff that we need to pass to the build, because we only have one CodeMagic application, and this CodeMagic application will be dynamically building for all of your clients. So when you're starting a new build, you will be passing some variables like the client ID, the unique identifier, and we'll be see in a second that we have something called the environment variable that holds the secrets for this specific client. So CodeMagic can fetch the correct resources and build the application for this client. So after we started a new build, CodeMagic will clone the base code, It's an important point because we only have one application, so we will only clone the base application from the connected repository. Okay, after that, using the past client ID that we passed at the first step, CodeMagic will download the client assets. So you can store this zip archives in S3, NECMS, whatever it suits you. After that, using some simple shell scripts, we will replace the assets. So after we zip the client archive and replace the assets, read the other configuration from the environment variable and set them. And we will see all of that in details in a second. After that, we build the application, we sign it, and then we build the application for this specific client. And eventually, we will publish that application to this client store's credentials.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Mohammed, for that summary of the steps. So, could you just give us an explanation of the demo that you're going to show to us and what's involved?
Okay, so I have this simple Flutter application. It's just the simple counter application, but with a little bit of modifications. I have in here a .m file that contains the app title and the primary color that we'll be using. And in our main function, we are just reading this from the .m file, and the final application looks something like this. So Salam is the app name, and this primary color is for this client. So this is the base application, and I'll be white labeling this application for multiple clients. So for simplicity and to make this video short, the things that we'll be replacing for the multiple clients is the name and the primary color, and of course the signing files and all of that, and the stores.
And are there any asset files that you'll be changing as well?
Yep, of course. So each of these clients, so right now I have three icons for just testing. This is the Salam, the base application that we already have. We'll be white labeling application for two other clients, which are Hala, this icon, and hello with this icon. So this is a Flutter application. So for simplicity, you can use something like the Flutter launcher icons package to just add this section in here and generate the icons for each one of these clients. So just replace the client name in here and run the package, and it will automatically generate the icons for you. So for that, I already generated the icons, and let me just open it. Uh, okay, in here. So I have three folders for each of my clients, and it contains the Android icons and the iOS icons. I archive them and upload them to my S3 bucket.
Okay, so now we know how you've got the image assets and icons. What about things like environment variables and secrets? How are those handled within
Okay.
the process of white labeling?
So in CodeMagic, we have something called the environment variable group, and each group contains multiple environment variables. So for this process, after we add our base application to CodeMagic, and if I open up my application, so in here I have my application after I connected it with CodeMagic. It's called Salam. And if we go to the environment variable section, in here you can add any environment variable. You just give it a name. So let's say config file. You give it a value, and if it's secure, just you need to check this secure check button, and you select the group. So for this, for white labeling, we'll be creating for each of our clients a unique group. So in my sample, I have two groups. One is called WL, it's white labeling underscore the name of my clients. So I have WL Hala and WL Hello. So what variables do I need to store in order to rebrand this? client and do all the necessary changes and sign it with the correct uh, Android key store or the iOS signing files. So if we take a look at the environment variable that I added for each of the clients, so first of all we have a .env file. As we saw in the demonstration, each of the clients have a different .env file, contains a different title and different primary color. So for that, we base64 encoded that file and added to CodeMagic. I'll show you the script in a second. So first of all, I added the .env file in
And
order
was there any particular reason that you base64 encoded that file?
because you can't upload a whole file to CodeMagic. Everything you need to add it should be base64 encoded. So we store them, and during the build we will decode them and write them to a new file, which is the .env file. So the builder machine will be using it. Okay, so for signing the Android application, we need the Android key store. So if I just open the sample project that we have, it contains all the necessary steps to do it. So adding the client's environment variables. So first of all, you need to create a new variable called the app name to replace it for the Android and the iOS side. For the Android package, to replace the package name, so create a new variable called the package name for each of your clients. The Android key store information, which are the key store itself, so it's a file .keystore, so you need to base64 encode it and upload it to CodeMagic as an environment variable, of course. The key alias and the password and the path. Okay, now to be able to upload that Android application to a specific client store, you need the Google Cloud Service JSON file. So it's just a JSON file. Just copy the content and add it as environment variable under this exact name, Google Cloud Service account credentials. Okay, that's for the Android side. For the iOS side, you need the App Store ID, the bundle ID, and the App Store Connect credentials, which are the key identifier, the issuer ID, the private key, and an iOS distribution private key. And using CodeMagic CLI, we will automatically fetch the necessary signing files for you and sign the application. And eventually the .env file that we talked about after we base64 encoded. Okay, so in order to add these values to CodeMagic, you can either use the UI in here, just paste the variable name, variable value, select the group, and you can add them. And we have other option if you have a lot of customers and you can open the UI for each time for adding a new variable. You can use the API to automatically add any environment variable. So in the body, you just need to specify the key, the value, the name of the group, and if it's secure or not. And just about the files, so we notice that we have the key store, which is a file, and we need to base64 encode it first. So just in the value, we are just getting this file and then base64 encoding the result. And for the Google Cloud JSON file, it's a little bit tricky because it's a JSON file, has a lot of lines, and it contains a lot of double quotes. So we'll be using this command to just replacing the new lines, ignoring the double quotes, and all of that.
Okay. And just to be clear, this documentation that you're looking at that explains it, where can people find this so they can follow along?
So it's basically in the CodeMagic CI/CD organization, and the project name is White Label Demo Project. And I'll be leaving all the links for the documentation. And of course, we have a fully getting started guide for the white label process. It explains all the steps in details. And if you need the project, the demo application, it's available on GitHub as well.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks, Mohammed.
Yep. So right now, after we prepared the all the environment variable necessary for all of our clients, right now we need to start a new build. Okay, before doing that, we need to create something called the codemagic.yaml file, which is the configuration file that holds all the necessary steps and workflows for building the application for multiple clients. So let me just zoom in a little bit. I think that's better. Okay, so in here I have my codemagic.yaml file. It should be placed at the root of your repository, and it should be called exactly codemagic.yaml. So can Codemagic read the configuration out of it, and do the necessary steps. So in here, you can specify multiple workflows. Each workflow has its own configuration. So it's a Flutter application. So I created three workflows. You can add however you want. I have one called Android workflow. Basically, we'll build the Android side and publish that to Google Play, and the iOS workflow will be building the iOS IPA file and publish that to App Store. And for testing, I have Android workflow for QA testing. It will just generate the APK and just without publishing to the store. Okay, let's start with the Android workflow. So in here, of course, I'll be leaving the documentation on how to get started with the CodeMagic.yaml in general. I'll not be explaining all of the steps in details. I'll be focusing on the white label script. So in here, I just specified the labels. So first of all, we need to make sure that this workflow will be triggered via the API. So there's an environment variable called client underscore ID will be passed with the API as we saw. And the name of the group that we'll be using as well. So just specified a little bit of labels to identify each client in the builds page, and I'll be getting my client assets from S3. So I imported the AWS credentials group, which includes the AWS access key ID, the access key, and the default region to be able to access that bucket and download the file. Uh, in here, we have a definition section. I'll talk about that in a second. So in the script section, first of all, we are getting the assets from S3. So let's open up our definition section. It's just because we are using the scripts in all of our workflows. So instead of rewriting them every time, we write them only once and call them. So we have some basic environment variables like the name of the S3 bucket that you are using, just replace this value, the Android assets folder name, and the iOS assets folder name. Okay, now for the script to download the assets from S3. First of all, we are defining the asset folder name, which is as we agreed on. It will be assets underscore the client ID. So in my case, it will be assets underscore hala and assets underscore hello, salam on all of the clients. Okay, so we are defining this value, and then we are adding it to the CM file to be able to use it in other scripts as environment variable. After that, we are using the AWS CLI, which is already installed on the CodeMagic machines, to copy this file into our local machine. So it's just the bucket name that we defined and the folder name .zip archive. We are unzipping this file, and now we have the icons after this step. So for the Android workflow, we need to set up the key store. So as we saw, we added the Android key store as an encoded value. So we need to decode that value into the correct path. So we can access that environment variable just by saying the name of the variable that we added in the UI or via the API. Because when we started in this build, and I'll show you how to do that, we passed the group name that we'll be using. So we set up the key store in here, and then we need to change the Android app name. So to do so, we just using set to do it, replacing from the Android mainfest file the line that contains Android labels, replace it with the new app name. This app name as well as is an environment variable. After that, we need to change the package name. So to do so, you can either use the Android package, which is the change app package name. If it's a Flutter application, just run it to be able to replace this package name, or you can use the this. Just let me. Where is it? The Android package name. You can use this script to create a new Gradle file called change package, and then add it to your build.gradle, and it will automatically pick up that new package name and use it. It's up to you.
Uh, and is that something that you would use with a native iOS app instead of a
Yes,
Flutter?
exactly. That's for the native iOS, native Android application, and you can use it in Flutter as well, because basically, eventually, Flutter using the native scripts to do it.
Okay.
Okay, so after we change the Android package name, we need to change the Android icons. So I've already uploaded all the icons to my S3, and I downloaded them in here. So I need just to copy the Android assets folder into this path, and it will automatically replace them. In here, we need to set the .m file, because we are using it in the application. It contains the app name and the primary color. So just like we set up the key store, we need to decode the .m file and write it to this specific file. Eventually, we need to, after we did all the replacement and configuration, and of course our build.gradle file is expecting, it will automatically be signed because it's reading the values from these environment variable that already exported in Codemagic during the build. So eventually we will be building the app bundle in release mode, and we will gather that artifact from this path, and we'll be publishing it to Google Play using the credentials as an environment variable as well that we specified for this specific client. We specify the track and whether we want to submit it as draft or not. So basically, that's the Android workflow. The QA for the Android, same steps, but instead of building the app bundle, we are building the app APK. And in the publishing section, we can publish it to an email or to Slack or whatever integration to be able to for testing. Now, let's go to the iOS workflow. Similar step, but different scripts to do it. In here, we have an environment variable called the Xcode scheme, which is runner in Flutter case. So first of all, we are getting the assets from S3 and changing the iOS app name. Using this list body, we'll be setting the values for these variables with the new value, which is the environment variable called app name. And then we need to set the bundle ID using set as well. We'll be using the new bundle ID, and then changing the iOS icons. Same for Android, just copying the new icons into this specific path, and setting the .env file, writing them to a file called .env. Now install the pods, and for the iOS code signing, so we'll be using something called the automatic code signing, which uses the Codemagic CLI tool to automatically fetch the required signing files. So after we initialize our keychain, we will be using App Store Connect fetch signing files in the CodeMagic CLI tool using this bundle ID, and we want the iOS App Store type of the signing files. And if you can't find them, you create them. And in the next time, we will CodeMagic will automatically fetch these files. So you don't have to upload your own certificate or provisioning profile, even though you can do. For example, you can upload those files to the S3 bucket, and after that, we will place them at the correct path and all of that. But the automatic code signing is much easier. So after we prepared our signing files, the provisioning profiles, and the signing certificates, we'll be building our final IPA in release mode, then gather the artifact in here, and eventually publish to App Store Connect using these environment variables, which are the App Store Connect credentials, the API key ID, and the issuer ID. And that's it for the iOS side as well. Now,
Okay, Mohammed, thanks for that great overview there of the workflows. But how do we actually start the builds? Could you give us some instruction on how to do that?
okay, so as I said, we need to start new builds with the API because we have some environment variable and group name to pass during the build. So in here, I open up my Postman workspace and I created a new workspace called White Label. And for each of my clients, I created for them a specific folder. So, for example, for the first client, which is Hala, I have three HTTP requests to trigger three workflows, the one I explained in the codemagic.yaml file. So, for example, if I want to start a new Android QA test, I'll be using this script. So basically, it's a post HTTP request, and in the body, I need to pass the app ID, the workflow ID, which is Android Workflow QA, the name of the branch, and whether I want to SSH into the machine or not. For now, false. And the important part is this part. Under the environment section, we are passing the client ID, which is Hala, as a variable, and the name of the group that holds all the secrets and API keys for this specific client, which is WL underscore Hala. Okay, and of course in the headers you need to add your access token to be able to authorize this request. Same goes for the other workflow, but with a different workflow. So when I trigger this build, it will publish to Google Play. And same for the iOS, same app ID, different workflow ID, and same environment. For the other client, just different client ID and different group name. So right now I can just start a new build for the first client and for the second client. So right now, if I opened my build page, builds in here, I can see that I have two running builds using the Android, the QA workflow. And in here, I can see the labels for each of the clients. So this is for client Hala, and this is for client Hello. So if we open up the build page, we'll see all the steps that we wrote in the codemagic.yaml file, and will be executed in here, and we'll see the results in a second.
So, Mohammed, does that mean that I have to start all builds using the REST API via Postman on my own computer, or is there another way to do this as part of the workflow process?
Basically, you can, for example, create a trigger on one of the CodeMagic workflows to be able to execute it on a pull request or a push request. So in here, I have another branch called trigger all. So in this workflow, will be triggering builds for all the clients that I'll be passing with my API request. So
Oh,
if I
okay.
open up my Postman again, I have two other requests in here. It says build all clients with the Android side. So instead of passing only one client ID, I'll be passing multiple clients ID. And so, for example, in here, I want to build for hello, and Ola, and the name of the branch, the app name, and the workflow ID, and the Codemagic credentials to be able to get the access key.
Okay. So this means that you're using Postman predominantly for like testing. You might want to build a specific customer's version, but in like a normal workflow process, then you'll be able to just say, I want to merge this into another branch and then trigger the build of all customer
Exactly.
apps. So you don't have to manually trigger anything, from your own desktop. Okay,
Yes,
that makes
exactly,
sense.
exactly. And that's for this specific workflow. We'll be reading the clients from the array that we passed, and in a simple for loop, we'll be looping through the clients and triggering new builds for each of these clients. CodeMagic will automatically trigger for the other clients. And for now, let's see what happened to our build. So we have a successful build. We can upload the APK in here. And I believe for the other client as well, we have two successful APKs.
Okay, so we've got a what looks like a release one and a QA one. Is that correct?
They're both in release mode, but for QA testing. If I want to publish to Google Play, then I need to trigger this build
Hmm.
and this build.
Okay, great stuff.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, thanks for that explanation, Mohammed. That was really informative. Just to add on a little bit of information or further context for customers who are white labeling, but also provide a dashboard that they've created for their customers to upload their own assets and things like certificates and key stores, then that can be incorporated or integrated to the workflow using the CodeMagic API. So they can literally initiate the builds from their own dashboard. It could be that they allow the customers to actually click a build button and then it will make an API call, pass over the credentials and required information in the API request in its payload, and then that will just initiate a build specifically for that customer.
Exactly.
So it's just another way of doing it as well.
Yep.
Okay, great stuff. So yeah, this has been a really interesting discussion. So thanks for going through the flow of this, Mohammed.
No
And
problem.
how can people get in contact with you if there's further questions or if people want help setting this up?
You can always go to the contact page in CodeMagic. Yeah, send us a message, and if you need any demo request or any questions, then you can ask us there. Just go to codemagic.io/contact, and you can submit any topic you want, a request for a demo request, or just chat with us.
Okay, thanks very much, Mohammed, for clarifying that. Okay, thanks for clarifying that, Mohammed. Thanks again for your time, and we look forward to talking to anybody who's interested in white labeling with CodeMagic.
Sure, sure. That was fun, and thank you for having me.
No problem.
Bye bye.
Ciao then. Bye bye.